Thanks so much, and thank you, Laurie and Robin, both for the work that you are doing. I'm going to bring a panel up here, and we're going to talk about technology and young women and what we need to know. And to help set that up, a close personal friend of ours, that's not true, Will Farrell has a video that we thought would set this up. So we're just going to show that video. Let's do that.
Oh, it's so nice to all be sitting down together. You can tell me something they did today.
I drew a horsey.
Good for you, son.
I started smoking.
I love you too, sweetheart.
I'm selling bongs out of our minivan.
I got a tramp stamp.
I'm getting implants.
I'm dating your brother.
Uh-huh.
I'm cooking meth in the basement.
Great idea, kiddo. That's why you're so popular at school.
How about that? So we're going to learn how to cook crystal meth in the basement today, because I think that would be a great start. I have three great panel experts with us here that I want to introduce, and then we're going to chat a little bit about technology and young women and young men as well. So on my far left is Danelle Spence. Let me tell you a bit about Danelle. Danelle is a teacher, school counselor with Rundle College, and a registered psychologist. She has over 24 years working with kids and adolescents in a wide variety of settings. She specializes in eating disorders, anxiety and self-harm, with a more recent focus on teens and technology. She's been the psychologist for many of the people in this room today. Danelle's last year's guest speaker for Girl Power Hour on the topic of 7 simple steps to understanding your teenager. Just kidding, that's impossible, is the name of that talk. And she's authored a mini book by the same name. Recently, she has developed an educational talk called Teens and Screens, which she is presenting across the city. Can we welcome Danelle? Hi, Danelle. It's kind of like the Oscars. You don't know, do you clap for yourself or do you say
totally.
It's tricky, right? I know.
Yeah.
Dr. Philip McRae. He is the Associate Coordinator Research with the Alberta Teachers Association and Adjunct Professor within the Faculty of Education at the U of A, where he earned his PhD. He has been a guest speaker locally and internationally, touching on a wide range of topics, including the impact of technology on children, schools, and communities, big data, little kids, new technologies and the opening of education, necessary evolution or dangerous spiral, and Internet of Me, connecting and disconnecting in a digital age. He is just off the plane from this weekend in Helsinki, Finland, where he's working with an international research delegation, and we're thrilled he's here. Let's welcome Dr. Philip McRae. Thank you very much. And finally, right beside me is Dr. April Elliott. Let me tell you a bit about her. She's a pediatrician and adolescent medicine specialist at the Alberta Children's Hospital and clinical associate professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the U of C. Over the last 17 years, April has been instrumental in developing adolescent health as a subspecialty and is the head of the section of adolescent medicine in the Department of Pediatrics. She has multiple publications and presenting on subjects including eating disorders, adolescent brain development, coaching approaches in adolescent health, and street-involved youth help, to name a few. And she is the only person, I think, here today who wheeled a suitcase in. She rearranged her schedule so she could fly in and come straight to us here, and we're so glad. This is Dr. April Elliott. Thanks for being here. So I know the burning question for many of you in the room is, how do I get my kids off Fortnite? So we're going to get to that, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. I want to start with you, April. Neuroplasticity of the brain. Talk a little bit about how phones and technology affects brains in all ages, but especially in developing brains.
Well, first of all, adolescent brains are under construction. So they're unique. So lots of times people will say, oh, they're just like big children or they're little adults, but they're constantly under construction. And the thing is, most of them get it. They get the gist of things. But they're in this time of massive dopamine surges, peaks and valleys. Your peak of dopamine happens at 17.
Really?
Right? Too bad, eh?
Yeah, yes.
So with all of this technology, it's just a rush of dopamine, a rush of dopamine. And we all feel it here, but for adolescents, it's heightened and the peaks and valleys are worse. So,
well, even like there's people in the room who you get a little buzz on their phone that says, oh, I got an email. Oh, somebody liked my whatever on whatever. that's the same thing, but even more so with a teenager.
Even more so. And another thing that we're finding, because the brain is not set up for multitasking, you cannot multitask. I don't care what anyone says, you can serial task. And we're really finding with ADHD that this is having an impact on youth because of that inattention and impulsivity, that trying to multitask. So if you walk around anywhere, you see youth with headphones in, they're looking, they're messaging, and they're trying to do their homework, and they wonder why that they are not doing well in the tests. The brain just can't do that.
Danelle, you talked to me earlier, and when I know Phil, you'll jump in as well, but in the world of downtime, that's a key part of any brain, but especially in a developing brain. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, well, our kids are hyperstimulated and they are hyper aroused and their nervous system is activated all the time. Those games are rapid fire. Just their brains are constantly on, and they have cortisol and adrenaline and all this stuff flooding their brains. And I think it's really important, especially when we're dealing with anxiety and self-harm and that sort of thing, that their brains are able to settle and calm, and that happens through downtime and unplugging and ensuring. Actually, I think there's new studies out there that says kids need about an hour of boredom every day to settle their nervous systems, and that's an opportunity for you to connect with your kids and have them play outside. And the importance of play, the unstructured play, is super important for brain development and to reduce anxiety and increase overall wellness. So making sure that there is that downtime, it's neurologically necessary.
But what about, and I'm not going to say that this is what we do at our house, because this has never happened. Okay, it happens every day at 4 o'clock or 5, when it's time to get supper ready. I could say, you know what we're going to do, kids? We're going to allow a little downtime. Let's just be bored. And then I'll have to rebuild the living room when they're done with it. Or I could say, here's an iPad, and you don't have to worry about it. How do you deal with that?
I think when we plug our kids in, we think that we're calming them down and we're distracting them, we're easing their systems, but we're actually hyperstimulating their bodies. And it's too much, and it's way too much for the developing brain, and it's way too much even for us as adults. So I think when we plug them in, I just think we're doing the opposite of what we're looking for, because that's when I'm just finding I've been working with teenagers for a long time, and they have an inability to sustain attention and to think deeply and to know what they feel, and all those things are really, really important for overall wellness. So we gotta unplug.
And you would say, I mean, again, I'm the guy that's like, but dad, and they're just wailing, and I go, this is so much easier. You say, if I just say, no, you gotta grind it out, eventually they'll calm down?
Yeah, and now I just wanna say, sorry, I'm like, yeah, I love talking.
No, it's...
I just want to say this is the best opportunity to tag on to what April was saying about neuroplasticity. You have no greater time to create healthy brain patterns than you do right now. You have you can see their inner world socially, emotionally, more than any other time. So now is the time to be a parent and bulldoze a bit and make them.
Dr. Phil.
Bring back boredom, Dave.
Yes.
You do?
Bring back boredom.
You do?
I mean, you know, part of this conversation, first of all, you know, I'm really touched by the conversations that were from the podium. You know, those of us who are parents, we have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old daughter and son. I think this is a really important issue generally. So we talk about boredom as a way to let creativity flourish. But we have to turn for a moment and look at ourselves. Increasingly, technology is getting in the way of a lot of those conversations, or saving stillness, you know, that we talk about. And in many ways, young people are in competition with technology for their parents' attention or for others' attention. So we need to, you know, when we talk about boredom, the digital baby rattle, right? You know, the Swiss Army knife of our time has become this thing that you can pull out anywhere in a lineup, in a bus, and you can just be, you know, satisfied, right, with something. But I think bringing back boredom, in a sense, is also allowing relationships and a space for relationships to really flourish. And you know, in terms of neuroplasticity and brain building, it's relationships.
I know you've all talked about this, things like eye contact is something that's a skill that actually isn't around as much. Is that accurate, or you can jump in, either of you, any of you that want to, yeah.
Oh man, it's everywhere. A lot of my colleagues who work in, when they see the moms, the new moms, and they go out and they're interacting, a lot of the new moms are on their phone this way, and their babies are this way. And babies learn by modeling, by looking at your face, your expressions, your eye contact. And so we're really missing out if someone is looking this way and their baby's this way.
I've actually had girls come to me and say they don't know how to have spontaneous conversation, and they don't understand the rhythm and flow of dialogue and conversations. They always have, when you're texting, and girls tend to be hyper texters, so they text all the time, but when you're texting, you can put out exactly what you want to say, how you want to say it, and how you want to be perceived. But now, they're not used to it. They're not used to, hey, what's up? They get shocked because they're not used to it. They always have those minutes to figure out what they're going to text.
They're used to WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, yeah. They're used to WhatsApp as opposed to how are you doing? So then what's our way out? Other than to say, well, we're putting it all away, and maybe that is what we do, but what's our way out in that?
One of the things I think that's important for us is technology is not going away, right? This is the digitally saturated life that is only going to get more connected, right? And the blurring of boundaries between humanity and technology is going to increase. But one of the things that I think is really important is balance. So you talked about dinner time, right? Dinner time and when you go to bed, right? Those are two really key moments. When you're eating dinner together, try not have those distractions. Try and be able to catch up with what's going on in young people's lives.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that if you ask this room how many people use their phones as alarm clocks, you'd probably get the majority of the hands go up. But go and buy an alarm clock and put your phone away, right? Because one of the things that we're finding in a study that we're doing with Harvard Medical School, a 10-year longitudinal study, is nocturnal screen time, or screen time at night, is really impacting a whole range of issues: readiness to learn, cognition, social emotional function. And so having phones out, 2 hours before you go to bed, that's another thing that I think it's finding balance is really important. And the two key places that we're working with the profession of teaching in Alberta is to talk about around the dinner table and at night.
In that, because is this also a case of kids these days where 30 years ago we said the same thing about TV, 30 years before that we said the same thing about radio, 30 years before that we said the same thing about hitting rocks with a stick? I'm not sure about that last one. But is that essentially, what is the difference now than what TV was, than what radio was?
I think you didn't carry a TV around with you. You didn't carry a video game around with you. 95% of the youth in the world have smartphones. And so you have it with you all the time, and there's that constant feedback and that phantom buzz. Has everyone had that phantom buzz before? Where you think your phone, but it's not? That's real, right? And so I think that's the thing, is that they're with us, they're constantly there, where TV had its problems, and so did video games, but they don't come with you. So they're everywhere with you, even in the bathrooms.
Well, I know whenever I'm on Twitter, whenever I see someone has retweeted, I know they did that in the bathroom. Am I right? You talk to girls a lot, and you've counseled. There's people in here who recognize you as helping their daughter, and some of them their sons. Is this something that you would say is a major player in that situation?
I would say it's a major player. I just think the important thing for anxiety-based disorders, eating disorders, self-harm, anxiety, is that those that are struggling with those concerns, they need to get good with themselves. They need that self-reflective capacity. They need to know, what am I feeling? What do I need to do with these feelings? And they need to do that in a connected relationship with someone that they feel safe with. And hopefully that's mom and dad, but that comes with spending time together and not being plugged in and not being distracted, and having the parent be emotionally available. As soon as girls and boys feel that I am being seen, felt, and understood by a caring adult in my world, anxiety goes down. And so when they like Philip was saying, before bed, I say tech-free zones 100% from the bedroom, but an hour before bed, that's an amazing time to sit with your child and go, how was your day? What did you like about your day? What do you wish you had done differently, better? Is there anything you need to work on tomorrow? Or maybe that's just an opportunity for them to cry or share their fears with you as parents. So I say, I know we're getting to some of the nitty gritty of some tips and tools to leave with, but I say tech-free dinner time. That is amazing to sit, make eye contact, have the ping pong of conversation going so they learn how to do that and be with each other and just have those zones and set them up.
I feel like at some point I should say, okay, how many hours a day, right? Because I know that all of us would predict under what we think our kids are doing, but is it too much? And what would you say is just give me a number? What's a limit? You'd say,
Well, the Canadian Pediatric Society says no screen time before the age of 2.
how else are you supposed to raise your kids?
Be the mindful model, Dave.
Yes.
After that, really limiting to 2 to 3 max. And some of the youth that I see are doing 14 to 16 hours. So I think, like you said, you need balance. You can't just come down cold turkey. There has to be boundaries put in place early on. If you're already in it, then you start to dial it back a bit.
Right.
You want to have phones away 2 hours, an hour if you need to before bedtime. Allow that melatonin to surge. You need to start to establish meal times and other times when friends come over that there's no technology out.
Now, if you're in it, like if you're in the middle of that, and I read Jim Balsley is the guy, one of the folks at RIM who started Blackberries, and he said he was describing going out at a restaurant, and they're eating and with a family, and there was a teenager there, and the teenager took out their phone, and so the mom said, don't use your phone at supper. The dad said, hey, you know what? And eventually they just took it from him, and took the phone away and say, no, you're going to be here, and Jim Balsley said it was the strangest thing to watch this kid. First of all, he was furious, so he was really mad at mom and dad, and then he sat there for the rest of the meal like a drug addict, going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I'm mad, and I want to get at that. So if you're in that, if there's parents in here going, yeah, great, I got to start doing that. How do I get through that world?
So Michael Rich, when he speaks, he'll talk about having some ground rules if you're trying to basically wean off of technology, that you have, okay, you go 15 minutes in your meal, and then everyone can have a few minute cell phone check. And then you go back to your meal, and that just reduces that addictive factor. Eventually, you may want to get to zone-free, but initially, I think you're correct, is that if you do that, I mean, we all feel it. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm not on social media. I'm on social media, and I do those things. And when you become aware, then you know those times where you don't bring the phone out, and you do that over time. So our youth need that as well. Our children need that guidance.
What's interesting about technology is we've shaped our technologies, and they're shaping our habits, our relationships, our identities. And one of the really pragmatic kind of considerations, I think, for parents is to think about nutrition, like a digital hygiene. So, would you feed your children 6 glasses of pop every day, or do you, let them, when it's Halloween, have some candy, and otherwise it's... Think of it more as, again, back to the balance. What's the digital hygiene, right? Because one of the things with screen time limits, over the age of 2, it's no more than 2 hours a day. But what we found in society is that that's not really working anymore. So it's really about balance, and also I would, one of the things I've been doing a lot of interviews on, radio and television, is banning cell phones, because France has banned cell phones in all their schools, especially junior and senior high. And they've done that because they're concerned about distraction and, a lot of the things that are happening. My concern is that doesn't help people learn to self-regulate. So how do we, say, you know what, we've filled up this glass today already with enough. Let's go outside. Let's go and have some free play. Spend some time doing other things. Because over time, those habits of mind and habits within the family, I think, get ingrained.
Yeah.
But one of the challenges is we have shaped our tools and now they're shaping our habits, right? So it's very easy to just reach for the phones or use it as a digital baby rattle.
And it scares me because I think I do that. I do it for myself. I don't know when the last time is I've just stood around bored. The last time I was in a line somewhere or waiting for something or waiting for my coffee. If you're at a coffee shop, everybody has their phone waiting for their coffee. So I'm not bored anymore. I have a connection to the entire universe. So how am I going to expect my kids to do that if I'm in the same boat?
That's right. Well, like I said, be the mindful model. You need to be aware of your own use of your digital devices, and then say, how am I going to change a little bit? And then how do you teach that to your youth? You're with them, in that boredom with them.
Right.
And so I think that's the beginning point, and it's tough. We're all there. You're not alone.
Well, so what are the stakes? What are the stakes in this? Greg Heath spoke earlier about his daughter and how, because I think it's easy to think of it as rude or to think, oh, it's obnoxious. The same way my parents thought rock music was obnoxious, and they said, that's not music, that's noise. Whatever that is, it's easy for an older generation to say, whatever the younger generation, that rap music, that's not music, that's just talking. That's my grandmother. In that world, what are the stakes? Is it just, yeah, it's annoying when kids are on their phones, or there's actual potential damage happening?
Well, it's rude. I think we have created a society of rudeness, but the stakes are what we're here for, is the anxiety. And if a child or a parent only has one way to soothe themselves. So I always think, what is this technology doing to my child? Is it numbing them because they don't want to feel something? Is it distracting them because they're awkward or uncomfortable? Is it an escape? Because a lot of boys will use avatars in some of those games to create a personality that they would prefer. So I always look at tech and go, what is it taking away from my child, instead of, oh, look at how negatively it's affecting my child. I obviously am concerned about that too, but I always think, okay, what is this doing for my child? Do they have any friends? And if they don't, if they're only online friends, then that's something I'm going to work on with my child. And if I don't, the stakes are they will never be able to have healthy relationships or go into conflict. So looking at your child, I get asked that all the time. What age should I give my child a cell phone? My child plays videos 2 hours a day. Is that too much? And I can never tell, because you have to look at your child and go, what is technology taking away? Do they exercise? Do they have healthy relationships? Do they sleep? If your child is not sleeping, then obviously you have to do a 2-hour before bed rule. So parent your child where they're at. Otherwise, the stakes are where they're stuck, and
Right.
there's increased anxiety.
Now, what do you say when they say how old?
Nice try. And I have to tell you,
Because I'm going to go through my kid, John, 7, that's all he talks about. He thinks, and this is his move. He said, I'm going to ask Santa. Because I'm just bypassing mom and dad. I'm going to get Santa for that phone. And that would...
I'm surprised. You seem like a pushover. But I wanted to add,
Yeah.
I think as a society, sorry,
No,
Dave,
no, no.
I just met you. It's rude. I think I tend to be that creepy person in the doctor's office or on the bus, or in a restaurant when you're waiting for someone. I don't have my phone with me, and I'm sitting there, and everyone asks, are you okay? Can I get you something? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, I'm okay. I'm just unplugged, and I'm taking this time for myself. And I think as a society, we're just not used to that. So if we all did that, and in that yellow book that's for sale out there, How to Break Up with Your Phone, I love this. She says, www, what for? So I have my cell phone. What for? What else could I be doing? And what, oh gosh, I just lost it. What for? Read the book.
first two were
Read the
good.
yellow book.
Buy the book, read the
What for, what else, and why now? Why now? Because it's automatic. And kids are just, opening and flipping, and as if I don't spend a ton of time on Pinterest, right? But what else could I be doing? I could be hanging with my friends. I could be knitting. I could be playing rocks and sticks like you did, right? I could be doing something else.
Man, we had fun in those days.
And I think one of the things that you asked at the beginning about neuroplasticity is executive functioning. That's what we want to help our children build, is their executive functioning. And when they're young, they don't have that because this frontal lobe at the beginning just isn't connected to that emotion part of their brain. And they have so many emotions. So we want to help them with that connection. And you spoke to that. They need sleep, right? They need sleep. They need a proper diet. They need exercise. They should be out there playing in some of the instances.
Right.
And they need to connect with family and friends. And so that builds executive functioning. And everyone's like, that's simple, but it's not easy.
No, that's all. It's not as easy. You just got back from Helsinki. Are parents around the world talking about the same thing?
Yeah, this is a huge issue. I mean, Reykjavik in 3 weeks. I was in 5 cities in 5 days, and this is all over the world. It's globalization. But, you know, one of the things, when you ask about what's at stake, I think that this conversation about anxiety and depression, one of the things we have to remember is the ability to bounce back from adversity, to have resilience. Thousands of my colleagues who are teaching right now in schools across Alberta have been talking to me about the concerns they have over building resilience in young people. And I think one of the things at stake here is that we could be really undermining that ability to build resilience. So the technology pulling us away from relationships, the technology not allowing us to be present, right? To be absent when people are standing, they're alone together, right? At a dinner table or on a bus stop or whatever. So I think that's at stake. But, you know, this is a business audience primarily and a lot of families here. And I think the other thing at stake right now that hasn't been talked about is trust. And it's trust within our communities and with each other. There's a really interesting study that was just released that says if you take your phone out and you have it turned up on a table when you have a meeting, people are automatically 30% less likely to trust what you say to them because they think you're going to be distracted by the phone. If you turn your phone over, they're about 15% less likely to trust what you have to say. And if you don't have your phone out at all, then you start kind of fresh with whatever the relationship. So I think resilience, trust, and relationship building are all really important for the next generation.
Okay, so for the last 5 minutes of our conversation, we're going to work our way down, and I want you to say, okay, if you're going to take anything away from this conversation, here's a couple of ideas or tips. We'll start with you, Danelle, and work our way down.
I think number one would have those tech-free zones. So no tech in the car ride, no tech at the dinner table, and no tech in the bedrooms.
3 simple rules.
So I have 3, and they're be balanced, be mindful, and be present. And I'll tell you what they are. Be balanced is not at the dinner table, don't have your device out, and not at night. That's the balance, because other times you're going to be using and engaging with technology, and so are young people. So it's where's the balance? Those are 2 key places right now. Being mindful goes to what my colleague April had said about developmental space. I think that if people say give an iPad to every child, that's a real problem, especially when 0 to 18 months. You know, the Palix Foundation, I know that they've done a lot of work on serve and return and, you know, that ability to build relationships. We need to be mindful that developmentally, technology has to be introduced at the right age and at the right stage. And we're doing that in our K-12 public schools now. And the third, being present, is really to say that, you know, if you're with somebody, especially young people, don't let the technology get in the way. Don't let it take away that moment or that opportunity. Don't be absent when we really need to be there to build those relationships, to listen to them, to talk with them. So be balanced, be mindful, be present.
He stole mine.
Oh.
Just kidding.
Here you go.
I love them all.
Which I knew we would steal each other, but yeah.
I would add be curious and be reflective. And I think be curious is really important because, like you said, there's balance. And our children and youth need to be technology savvy. They're in a world that's going to have technology. I'm not anti-technology. And so be curious, get involved. What are you involved in? What are you doing? They like to teach stuff. They want you to be proud of what they're doing. Become involved. They're afraid to speak to you. When I do consults with you, they're afraid to speak to you because they think you're just going to say, get off. Or don't do that.
Right.
Be authoritative, not authoritarian. Be open to the conversation. So be curious, what's going on? Be their friend on their social media, right? and then anything that's on your phone at any time, I can look at. I may
Right.
never look at it, but I could look at it.
Right.
My grandmother could look at it. And be reflective. Always be thinking about what are you doing. I'm constantly doing that. I catch myself, you know, waiting in line for the plane.
Yeah.
You know, and then I put it down and become the creepy person that's looking at people. But that's kind of fun now. I'm discovering a whole new side of myself, right?
This side out
This
here.
side. I
Right?
love it. And so I would say to add, be curious and be reflective.
Are you worried about Fortnite? Because John's really excited about it. Do I have to worry about Fortnite?
Fortnite isn't the worst.
No?
So go to commonsensemedia.org and it'll rate all the games that your children are playing, and it'll tell you what's good about it and what's not good about it. I just wanted to tag on to what April was saying about monitoring, right? Like I so many times I'm looking at what kids are texting each other and what they're posting, and I think parents trust too soon, and I think teach skills, don't consequence or discipline, or put those parent monitors on without teaching the skills, because like Philip said, we can't just eliminate technology. It's not going anywhere, but we can limit it and we can teach them how they're being on social media. And so playing that game, play Fortnite with your son and see why they enjoy it. Like, what a nice connecting moment with father and son. And then when he kicks your butt,
Which he will.
then you have a moment. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
be curious, join them in what they're doing, and learn about them, and then you're building the relationship too.
There's so much we could talk about, but I so appreciate you guys spending the time to come here and chat with all of us and help me raise my 2 kids and hopefully help the rest of us with this. Can we thank our panel very much for being here? Thank you, Danelle. Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much. It's so good. Thank you, guys.